Welcome to the Soundiron Podcast. Today I'm with a few members of the Skewed Sound team. Do you guys want to go ahead and introduce yourselves and sort of what you do?
Sure. My name is Steve Pardo. I am a composer with Skewsound. I also do a lot of interactive audio and interactive music, generative audio, that kind of thing, as well as VR audio and spatial audio.
Yeah, and I'm Nick Kallman. I'm one of the sound designers here at Skewsound, focusing on mostly sound design and dialogue production.
So what are some of the more recent projects you guys have worked on? I know I think Risk of Rain 2 is the most recent. So were you guys involved in the original, or were you guys just brought on for the sequel?
For Risk of Rain 2, we worked with them just on the sequel. We were not part of the original team for the first game. But the original composer, Chris Christodoulou, he was brought back to do Risk of Rain 2. So we worked closely with him to build up this interactive music system to put his awesome music in this crazy, weird game.
That's awesome. So what was your guys' creative approach as far as working on this game? Was there certain things they wanted you guys to do? Did you guys do a lot of like field recording, or what was your guys' creative approach for working on this game?
Yeah, I think they came to us because they were reimagining their game, their franchise, their IP from a 2D game, which Risk of Rain 1 was, into 3D. And I think with that brought a lot of problems they needed to solve from an audio perspective. 2D game is a lot simpler. It's a flat plane. It's easier to comprehend and build systems around that. So I think they approached us because of our work in other 3D games we've done in the past. Even games like Grim Dawn, which is a big indie hit. It's an action RPG. We've been with that team for a while. So I think they approached us for that knowledge, and then just our sound design shops, I guess, were up to their par. It's a sci-fi game, so I wasn't using a lot of sound library content to get kind of the weird sounds I needed, and a lot of synth stuff. There wasn't a lot of field recording for this project, also because of the schedules. Usually we would have maybe a month to work on a content update, and that's kind of how the project rolled out. I don't know if you remember following it through early access, but it was on Steam early access for a while, and every few months there'd be a content update, a free update for the game. And so they were slowly building out the full experience using early access as like their platform and their test platform, so they could have hundreds, thousands of players playing and finding all these issues and polishing before the first, we called it V1, the actual release of the game came out earlier this year. But because the sound cycle, the development cycle for audio was maybe a month max, we weren't afforded really the luxury, because we honestly wouldn't know what was coming into the game because they were still figuring it out. And once they figured it out, they sent over video captures for us to work off of, and just kind of technical documents to know what these characters, enemies, levels were. But because of that, we didn't unfortunately have the time to do a lot of field recording for it. But sound libraries saved my ass, that's for sure.
Yeah, especially when you have all these like pre-polished sounds that are just kind of ready to go. It's always helpful, especially if it's like you already have the sound in your head, just kind of sifting through sounds that are already there for you is definitely a lot easier than going out and recording it, taking it back, sound designing it, and doing that kind of stuff. When you do have the opportunity to do any sort of like field recording or like manipulating sounds, kind of crafting them your own, do you have any favorite plugins or things you like to use to kind of like mangle and get some cool effects? And
Sure. I love the Isotope suite. Their RX platform actually is really cool for a sound design tool. I know it's built off of like cleaning up and audio restoration, but myself and Dan Chrislip, the other sound designer here at Skewsound, we use RX all the time to pull out weird artifacts from different sources. And actually, there's a little tick box on RX when you do the noise reduction, and you can export only the noise reduced portion of it, or the noise, I think they call it. And doing that gets some really weird textures and some really interesting source that we'll use with other plugins.
That's
I
cool.
work it.
I've never heard of that.
Yeah. It's. I mean, we kind of, Steve, we kind of do this a lot. We'll take tools and plugins that, should be used one way or were designed to be used one way, and find a way to just kind of get creative and we just get weird with it,
Yeah, totally.
And there are some cool things that come out of it. A lot of things end up on the cutting room floor, but that's kind of like audio and music design. It's a lot of experimentation. Yeah, I work in Nuendo primarily, Steinberg's DAW, and they have some great like bass plugins with their software. One of them I use all the time, I think, is called Pitch Driver. It's just a pitch shifter, but it has this one knob where you can mix the original signal in with the pitch shift signal. And so you maintain some of that frequency content. If you pitch down, you maintain the high frequency content. And that weird blend also gives it kind of an otherworldly, ethereal kind of feel. It's really interesting on voices, but I use it on really anything I need to like get more meat out of. I'll throw that quick little plugin, pitch it down, but maintain all the high end sizzle without the pitch down artifacts.
That's cool. I wonder if that plugin exists in Cubase, or is that mainly just a Nuendo thing? Or?
It totally could. I haven't used Cubase since our days at Harmonix, when we all used to work on Rock Band games. It totally could. I have no idea though.
Curious. Do you know what why you use Nuendo versus Cubase? Like, because I've always kind of wondered. I haven't looked into it too much. I've been a Cubase user for a while, but always not really sure why. Like, some people use Nuendo versus Cubase, or any specific reason why Nuendo is kind of like your DAW of choice.
Yeah, for me, I used to be a Pro Tools user, coming out of music school, working in studios, and it works great for that, right? Exporting a song, no problem. And then when I got into games work, having to export, small renders of like a footstep or a gunshot, or, very small chunks of audio, was tedious as all hell back in Pro Tools. I don't know what it was, 8 or 9 back in those days. And then Nuendo, I heard about it, found out about it. I think we saw it at like a GDC, Game Developers Conference in San Francisco one year.
Yeah, I recall hearing it or seeing it demonstrated at the Audio Kinetic booth. Wise, there was a representative there, and he was showing off it connecting to Wise, among other things.
So that's another thing, is it besides like its export system, which I believe Pro Tools and all the other ones are kind of catching up to that, doing batched exports and renders and cycle markers. So you can I have a whole session built out, but I have these cycle markers for each little sound effect, each variation, and I can just export them all at once into individual little audio files. Same with like stemming out and things like that. But coming from the music world, shifting over to this, and doing more film work as well, Nuendo is kind of built to be the film, TV post DAW and video game design DAW. That's kind of what they've found their niche with this piece of software, compared to Cubase, which is more music production and strict music production.
Gotcha.
Granted, with any DAW you can do anything, right?
Yeah, they all basically have their own sort of they all do the same thing, but they all have their own little unique things or layouts and stuff like that.
They name things differently, which is confusing sometimes if you haven't jumped into a DAW in a while.
Mm-hmm.
But Nuendo also connects with another piece of software we use quite frequently called Wise, and Steve just mentioned it. It's an audio middleware for game development. I don't know how familiar you are with that.
I've heard a little bit about some of the. I interviewed Jason Graves a while back, and he was telling me that he was getting into using Wise and just being able to see a little bit under the hood of how the music and sounds are implemented into the game and stuff like that. So yeah, if you want to talk about that, that'd be great for anyone who's wanting to get into that.
Sure. So high level, it's an audio, we call it audio middleware, and it bridges the gap between an audio designer and their DAW, which they're familiar in, and a game engine like Unreal or Unity. And so it's right in the middle between them. It's a familiar interface for designers and musicians like myself, who maybe don't have all of the technical know-how to jump right into a game engine and program like C++. It bridges the gap between a lot of that. And unfortunately, game engines nowadays aren't quite up to par with all of the audio tools and power that we have in DAWs. And so this audio middleware comes with like a lot of systems, simple things like busing and side chaining and real-time effects, and also taking data from the game to basically automate different parameters in your game. It just does all that. And Nuendo plugs into Wise. So if I have a Wise project open and I'm working on some design for it, as soon as I export from Nuendo, it immediately imports it into the Wise project and puts it where I need to. And when you're working on, I don't know how, do we have like 5 or 10 projects going simultaneously this year, Steve, at one time? So like
that sounds about right. Yeah.
Oh,
so
wow.
when we have to work quickly, and efficiencies are everything. So even just those couple clicks of like going to find the folder where I exported to and dragging that into the Wise project, like those couple clicks like add up over a year. And it's great to just hit that one button. It imports it directly into Wise for me. But the best thing is once I get it into the game and I'm testing it and playing it, seeing how it feels. If I hate it and I don't like, or I need to change it, I can go into Wise, and maybe this is like weeks after I worked on this sound. Wise, when Nuendo exports it, it remembers the metadata of what project it was in and where it was on the timeline, that one sound effect. So from within Wise, I can right-click, open in Nuendo. It opens my Nuendo project and puts my cursor right on the timeline where that export came from, saving a ton of time trying to hunt down.
Yeah, that right there seems like a huge time saver, because instead of like scrolling through your project trying to find where that sound is or trying to remember where you were, how you worked on it, that's super cool.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's really nice. Unfortunately, you have to like use that Nuendo to Wise like bridge, the automatic import from the Nuendo export to maintain that metadata, I believe. Maybe they've improved that in the newer versions, but yeah. So that's like one of the reasons I really enjoy Nuendo. It's great with film work too, and ADR, which we do, and a good amount of, but we're mostly a game audio studio.
So is that the main DAW that you work in? Do you use any others for any specific things? I know some people like to use Ableton for certain things, maybe like more like electronic stuff, or just for programming, that sort of thing. Do you use any others?
Me personally, I have Reaper ready to go. Some of our other studios we partner with and work with prefer to work in Reaper, so I'll do designs in there so that they have access to that session as well. If they ever need to revisit it, because we are kind of most of the time we're like a third party audio house. We really like to be the main designers and the main like team, and that's what Risk of Rain was. That's what Signs of the Sojourner, which Steve just knocked out an amazing soundtrack on. We were the audio house for that, or the audio
That's
team.
awesome.
But yeah, I use Reaper. Reaper and Nuendo are kind of my main ones. The Isotope and SoundForge are there just for like some like single file editing or other things. There's some other like batch processing tools that we use for dialogue production especially, but as far as like a main big DAW, Reaper and Nuendo, those are mine. Steve, I think you use some different ones.
Yeah, Logic is still sort of my home base for music production. I've been using that since college, and I still, when you're in creative right brain mode, you kind of want to be the most in a comfortable at home kind of place. It's where all my presets and channel strips are. So just being able to load up a session and pump stuff in is I just feel the most comfortable there. So it doesn't have all the technical wizardry stuff that some of the other DAWs currently do, such as Ableton. And I love Reaper. I wish that I could make that jump to Reaper, but that would just take way too long. Actually, I really do like how it's so lightweight and just so flexible. And whenever I do quote unquote sound design for a game, if I'm like, for example, on my Windows machine, I'm doing that work within Reaper, especially for multi-channel audio stuff, like anything regarding VR audio or using ambisonic tools. Logic can't do that out of the box. Anything that's like multi-channel is kind of cumbersome. I kind of am anti-Pro Tools, so I know that you can do all that stuff there. So try to stay away as much as possible. So I feel like Reaper just happens. It's so easy to kind of load up a crazy multi-channel session and load your sounds in there, and it seems like made for that kind of workflow. But I also am using Ableton a lot for generative music right now. It's like I've only been using it this last year, and I feel like my eyes are open to just how incredible Ableton is for, I don't know, generative music stuff. It's just insane. I'm still kind of like peeling away layers, and I'm in that honeymoon phase of, figuring out just how incredible Ableton is,
So for composing, what types of things would you use Ableton for? Like more like percussion or groove type stuff, or
yeah, like loop based stuff, and like I said, generative music. I work a lot in AI driven music, and I'm pairing that with Max MSP, using a lot of Max for Live patches, that kind of thing. It just like kind of comes with all of the access to like MIDI and OSC and Max for Live built in, kind of like allows for seemingly unlimited generative music possibilities. But if I'm composing for like a soundtrack or for a TV show, games, TV shows, my own personal music, I am not doing that in Ableton. Like I said, I've only been using it this year, so I still feel like I need something where I can have a timeline and it's very traditional, and I can just plop in ideas, and that's where Logic, it's still my like home base, like I was saying before.
Nice. What version of Logic are you on?
I'm on the most recent, whatever that is, 10.4. I want to say it is. I can't remember.
Yeah, I started on Logic Pro 9, and I know there's some people that are still on it. And it kind of surprises me sometimes when I see, I think it's because certain older composers, or not older composers, like composers that have been using it forever, they're just like, like they're so just, this is it. I'm sure there's people that are still on like super old versions of Pro Tools just because they're just like, this works. Like every time I get a new one, there's some bug or something, or, even old OSs for Mac and stuff like that. It's kind of like you just have like this comfort that kind of resides there.
It works. Yeah. I like to have my computers and DAWs broken all the time, so I am constantly updating. I haven't updated to Big Sur yet. Whatever that is, 11.0 or 1, the new Mac operating system.
Yeah.
But I did just upgrade to Catalina finally a couple months ago, and it wasn't the easiest migration, but so yeah, I'm on the most recent things. If at all possible, I like to keep up to date.
Yeah, I love getting those whenever it's always when Apple updates like a new OS version, you get those emails from every audio maker.
Yeah, it's now compatible for this. It's now
compatible
with this. You're just
like, wait, don't update.
Yeah, that's where it's always kind of like, oh man, like there's always that fear of like everything just breaking, like plugins stop working and they're just like black, or there's some kind of UI issue. Or
I was gonna say, like 10 years ago when I was working in studios, like the studios were never connected to an internet or any sort of network. They were completely isolated, like air gapped, I guess they would call it now. And it was because they didn't want any update to like come to the software and screw up everything. And when you're working in a studio too, when you're booked, like you don't have downtime to update. It's a whole process to like make sure everything is like still working and fully.
Yeah, especially back then when maybe certain computers just weren't that up to date with like malware or something like that. Like the last thing you want is your whole computer to just get ripped apart by some virus or something. So
yeah. It still worries me to this day, but maybe it's not as bad of an issue.
Yeah, I remember back when I was using Mac for everything. I remember every time there would be some new update, like I'd just be like, "All right, here we go," and just like hold my breath and just like hope that everything doesn't get torn apart. Like I remember I was using Logic Pro 9, and I updated. I think it might have been to Catalina, and Logic Pro 9 just stopped working. It just wasn't compatible with it anymore. So I was like, well, that's a bummer. Like, cause I have all these old projects I couldn't open anymore. So it's basically like forcing me to have to get that. But around that time, I think a little before I already made the switch to Cubase because there were certain things in LP9 that just I don't know, it was just like lacking certain things, certain editing possibilities and routing and stuff like that.
Yeah, and to kind of piggyback on Steve's like Reaper talk, I love that software too. The only thing I hate about it is you have to spend like a month fully customizing it to get it to what you like to do. Like out of the box, it's cumbersome. It doesn't flow really well. And if you're familiar with like Pro Tools, there are ways, I believe there's like presets and stuff you can download to like kind of get it to behave,
like
reskin it, and all the hotkeys that you're familiar with like will just work.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the biggest like hurdle for me is to like jump if I wanted to use Reaper exclusively, would be like that learning curve and that setup. That's the biggest hurdle for me. Like Nuendo, I opened it up and like things are there and it's clean, it works. Like, yeah, there's different hotkeys and you can customize all those too, but there's not that weird learning and programming setup stuff that you have with Reaper, which also makes it super powerful if you spend that time to do it.
Yeah, Reaper is one of those investments that like if you invest in it enough, you'll start to realize how powerful it actually is. We use Reaper a lot for editing, and it's pretty powerful as far as like what you can do with just being able to, especially for sampling, just thousands and thousands of hits and articulations, and being able to like sift through and edit all those, and in a quick time, it's pretty daunting. So it's super helpful for that.
Right. Yeah, we used it on a project called Disintegration that came out, I think it was earlier this year. Kind of a first person shooter, like you're kind of flying up above, sci-fi thing. We used it for all the cinematic work on that, and the biggest downfall we noticed is Reaper does not handle surround sounds smoothly at all. Like it's a very hacky system of plugins to give you your different channels and pan around. Like there's no like integrated panner for surround sounds.
It's like a little bit of a workaround to get it working.
Yeah, it was kind of a pain in the ass to do that, but we'd already like committed. We already jumped in the deep end with Reaper on these cinematics.
Like, all right, I guess we got to figure it out.
So we got to work with it. Yeah. The sessions would run pretty slow, but the export was good. So
nice. So talk a little bit about Skewsound. How did you guys all start? What made you guys get together to start the company, and a little bit of history on that?
Yeah. Steve, I'll let you take this one. I feel like I've been talking a lot.
I like your voice, Nick. Give me a break. Yeah, so we started, we were all employees at Harmonix Music Systems, known for Guitar Hero and Rock Band and Dance Central. So we were all on the audio team there as composer sound designers at Harmonix for 6 to 10 years. I was the last one there to leave, to split and go all in with Skew. So we started, what was it, 2014, I want to say?
Yeah, that's when we officially like formed the company. But we had been working on other projects way before that.
Right, we were sort of tangentially working outside of Skew with Dan Crislip, our audio director here at Skew. And anyway, so we were all on the same game. It was unreleased, this title. It was a non-music game at Harmonix, which was very strange, but got us into Wise, got us into sort of being a traditional audio team, like for a traditional game, and we learned a lot and got to work really, really closely together. Both me and Chris Wilson were both co-composing. We were, both in the studio together, writing music as a team. Nick and Dan were doing sound and implementation, the whole stack, and so, it was the four of us working together for about a year, maybe more. And that was around the time, I think, Nick, you had left and Dan was thinking about leaving. And Dan was like, you know what, I want to start a company and just do this with you guys, and take it out on the road. And so we formed the company, and I was still working at Harmonix, but working with these guys. We were fully remote and started working on games. Almost immediately, we started getting work. Once the word got out that we were kind of taking the show on the road, we got really fortunate right off the bat. So, 6 years in, we are all doing this kind of full time now, and we are, branched out now into TV, and just any sort of commercial work or corporate work that's come around. But like Nick was saying before, our bread and butter is still games or interactive experiences, interactive music experiences, interactive sound installations, that kind of thing.
That's awesome. How many do you have on the team so far?
So it's myself and Chris as the composers, and Dan Chrislip and Nick, who's here, as the sound designers. And we have a, kind of rotating cast of characters that we work with as contractors and interns. We just started doing internships last year, and given that we're remote, it's kind of, even though we're in COVID times, we've been remote. So, it's sort of like we can bring in whoever we want. We have a ton of music partners that we work with on soundtracks and instrumentalists and voiceover actors. And we're so used to this remote thing. That being said, it's really nice. I'm in Nashville. Chris Wilson is in Boston. Dan and Nick are on the West Coast, where if we ever need to be in-house with a studio, which happens from time to time, just even for a meeting or for a day call or something.
Yeah, we're kind of spread out.
We're able to do that. One of us are going to be somewhat near any of the the bigger tech hubs or game hubs.
That's cool. Yeah, having that flexibility of just being able to work remote and hire people, because it's like everyone nowadays basically has, all these tools at their fingertips at all times. So it's just a matter of just, sending an email or shooting someone a call, say, hey, can you do this? And it's really just a matter of, I think time is more the enemy. It's like technology's kind of allowed us all to just sort of, be able to wear all these multiple hats and take care of all this stuff. So that's really cool.
And if there's ever instrumentalists that we want to work with and they don't have a mic, we can be like, hey, we're going to give you a lot of work. Get a mic.
Yeah.
get some soundproof or sound,
a little bit of treatment in the room and all that.
Just get ready and we'll work together. And usually that's all they need to hear. And then they'll get, we'll set them up and it'll be great.
That's awesome. What types of mics do you guys prefer to work with?
Well, for music, I'm using a 414 for, my large diaphragm. I just got a Coles earlier this year. Or was it last year? I'm a woodwind player.
Oh, nice.
So, my main thing is saxophone, and I play a good amount of clarinet and flute. My wife plays flute, and I have a trumpet, and I blow air through it. So I use the Coles on all the horns a lot. It's become my new favorite microphone. But I just got a Sennheiser MK. What is it? 421? Is that what it is?
416, the shotgun.
Thank you. There it is. Yeah, I just got the shotgun finally. As I'm not sound designer by trade, but I still want to be able to record some birdsong and ambiences. So I just got myself situated with that. We actually placed our orders for Ambisonic Rode microphones. Which ones? And was it the NT?
Oh, I don't know.
The binaural
NS1. No, it's the
Ambisonic one.
It's the Ambisonic one. NS1, something like that. I don't know what it is.
Anyway, I am so excited to get that.
Yeah, they're all back ordered right now, though.
Yeah. Classic COVID situation.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, it's crazy now how hard it is to find certain pieces of gear. I was actually looking for some XLR cables the other day, and it was just back ordered. And I was like, I just wanted a 3-foot XLR cable, no big deal. And it's like,
yep, yeah, everyone's upping their video conferencing setups. So I know the SM7Bs are out of stock everywhere. The RE20s are out of stock because everyone wants a setup like you have there with the boom arm and
luckily I got mine before everything kind of went crazy or else it would have been really hard.
Yep. It's cool to see that people are taking that stuff seriously, and as I say this coming over my gaming headset and this terrible microphone, but
that works.
It works. That's all I needed to do. I'm not making games with this microphone here. But for me, to I guess answer your microphone question, I do a lot of location sound stuff for film and TV and commercials here in Portland, back when people could be in the same space together.
Mhm.
So I have like my whole kit, like a little, sound devices bag and everything. But my microphones are all built off of the Sennheiser suite, so the 416s, the 8040s, 8020s. I don't know, cardioid and the figure 8. So I do run an MS setup a lot of the time when I'm doing field recording.
Mhm.
I just find it more versatile. As you know, with MS, you have like your mono source, but you can also capture that as a stereo source. So depending on what it is and the application of it, you have that flexibility to get that width, or you just have the close-up mono signal. We've been doing a lot of footsteps with an MS pair, which is really interesting for first-person games and third-person games. They just give a different flavor to have like that stereo content as you're hearing them as your character's walking around, compared to just a mono source recorded in a Foley studio or something.
Mhm.
So that's been interesting. The Sanken CO100K, I believe, the 100 kilohertz mic that records like crazy high frequencies. Use that a lot for any sort of sound design or creature sounds. Just being able to pitch that down, record it at 192 and pitch it down. You still have all that high frequency content that we can't hear, but it's hopefully there. Most of the time it is. So you can, pitching that down and still getting like a very, that's always the problem with pitching things down, right? Is it sounds muffled. And that's kind of why I talked about that pitch driver plugin, where you can maintain the original signal a little bit
Mhm.
if you want. So it keeps that high frequency content, doesn't sound muffled. The 100K mic usually solves that issue because that content's there. So even if you pitch down, you get like these interesting ultra high frequency stuff that gets pulled down into your register, your hearing range,
Yeah.
up to 20K. So you can get some really interesting things like that, and make things sound huge that shouldn't have sounded huge. Like small little, I have like a lock here. I just have like this little plastic lock. I actually practice lock picking and stuff, so I have this. And unlocking this into one of those mics like gives you this giant sound of mechanics. It's fascinating what you can do with that.
That's cool. Everyone watching this now is going to be like, "Hey, keep him away from my lock safe." I don't know.
I'm not good. I just like doing it. I think it's fun. There's a YouTube channel I watch. It's like very ASMR, very satisfying to watch him like pick locks.
You just hear it's just like this, like all these like little clinking sounds. Just
and he has a nice way of talking. I like his channel. It's good. Yeah, those are kind of my bread and butter mics that I'll go for. Because I do a lot of mostly field recording. I don't do a lot of music recording, if at all. I can't remember the last time I did any music stuff with an actual mic, like recording. Because I've done like virtual instruments and synth stuff. We work with high res games, working on some Smite content, and some of those had some like musical elements to it, but it was all virtual instruments. Some of those sounds.
So Steve, since you have I see in the back you got a whole bunch of instruments, is there anything that you do with some of the different instruments that you have, being that you're mainly or predominantly a wind player? Do you ever try to use any of those other instruments that maybe are more of like the secondary type instruments that you played to like get any kind of weird sounds, or do you experiment with them and do any kind of crazy stuff to get some cool sounds out of them?
I mean, yeah, definitely. I guess I would consider myself a multi-instrumentalist. Like, I play the saxophone and woodwinds is like professionally. But I pick up any of these instruments. Like for the Sojourner soundtrack, it's mostly me playing every instrument, and then I would bring in professional violin player, professional cello player, a jazz guitarist who I just love the way he plays. So I want his sound on the soundtrack. You know what I mean? So if there's ever like specialty players or personalities that I want to add to like the palette, that's generally how I approach music production. But yeah, like the sound designer in me, definitely. I mean, that's like part of the joy of bringing a new character or sound to a game or to a show, is just like doing that experimentation. one of the main reasons I wanted to, to set myself up with a shotgun microphone and field recorder is to be able to go out and record stuff that I could potentially use for musical purposes. The lock example, Nick, is a great example of like, how can I turn some of those clinkety clankety things into like a what sounds like, I don't know, cyberpunk kind of, metallic kind of synthetic
stuff,
thing, I like doing a lot of field recording for bird song and just nature ambience as well. So, I'm definitely looking forward to that part of it. But we've been doing this like that. The spirit of that has been ongoing since we started. Chris Wilson, the other composer, made a point to build instruments for a game from scratch, and then so now he has these like incredible, like, what is it, a Bode acoustic guitar that he made, a contrabass banjo that he built from like a banister and
it's a stair banister, like handrail is the neck, and it's a giant like kick drum really down at the bottom, and it's like, looks like an upright bass almost, but like a huge banjo upright bass.
Yeah. When he brought that in, I was like, that's mine.
Yeah.
I want to play that.
Yeah. The contrabanjo?
Contrabass banjo. So Chris Wilson, like when we get a new project, he really likes to like immerse himself into the story and the world of the game or movie or film or whatever we're working on. And with that, he thinks about, because he's a musician, he thinks about what type of music would this world, these people, what have you, the inhabitants, what would they perform? What would their music sound like? Is it more primitive? Is it kind of, cyberpunk seems to be the buzzword now. Is it more that kind of like hybrid, like synthy tech stuff? And he builds instruments like to fill this gap. He's built like that giant contrabass banjo. He built a crazy kora, I think, using a lot of like, I think it was like fishing wire, like nylon fishing line is like the strings of it. That thing I guess is a bear to tune. It's pretty ridiculous. We can get you some photos of them too, so you kind of know what we're talking about.
Yeah, that'd be cool to see.
Yeah, so it looks like a kora, if you're familiar with what that kind of looks like. And then what else was there? Oh, there's like the grillophone.
Yeah, a grillophone. I think it was just
almost like a water phone type of sound to it, hydrophone or water phone. Yeah.
He also made like a wooden thing that we called a paducah phone. I think we ever used it for much because it ended up making up one sound. But I just like in general that like methodology of like creating something from nothing in order to influence your sonic space, totally giving the like narrative conceit of whatever project we're working on just a little bit more personality and uniqueness. And it just inspires us too,
Yeah, because it's a fun thing to not only just compose something, but when you're, because we're all creatives, it's all about creating something, whether it's like a piece of music or a sculpture, art, it's like, it's the same thing, especially if it's for the purpose of creating music, then it's like, it's even cooler because it's like, one great way to sort of have a unique sound, and especially per project, and makes other projects want to reach out to you because it's like, we're going to get something that's completely unique and, or kind of really makes the sounds of the game kind of its own. So that's really cool.
Yeah, that's what we strive to do. And Steve nailed it with Signs of the Sojourner too. That soundtrack is so interesting and unique, and I don't even know what genre you would classify it in because it's like all of them. Yeah, congrats.
Yeah, trying to come up with sounds for what a wide array of cultures within one kind of creative idea was a really fun challenge.
Well, I really appreciate you guys' time. It's been great to hear the insight into how you guys started the company, and a little bit of insight into your process. So I really appreciate that. Is there any place where people can find you guys, or if they want to reach out and contact you or anything like that?
You can find us at skewsound.com. We're at Skewsound on Twitter, and and all the other social media places.
That's awesome. Well, yeah, thank you so much. And I appreciate your time, and yeah, talk to you guys later.
Thank you, Craig. Take care.
Thanks, Craig.
Take it easy.